So let me begin by taking a step back in time to the old Bengal, part of which is current-day Bangladesh. So Bengal, once upon a time, was globally renowned for its muslin cloth, a fabric that has been described as woven air, a fabric so sophisticated that it could pass through a ring. But muslin is not just a material. It was a form of knowledge treasured by families throughout generations. Knowledge that transformed lives and was transmitted throughout generations. But when colonial logics shifted, the heritage was deliberately dismantled. Macaulay's 1835 Minute on Indian Education dismissed indigenous systems and established models of community schooling so that clerks and bureaucrats could be produced to serve the needs of the imperial market, the empire. Education became centralized, exam-based, oriented towards producing factory workers. Teachers were disempowered, inquiry was replaced, schooling became industrialized. And that colonial industrial model of education has left behind a stubborn legacy. In Bangladesh today, despite waves of curricular reform, examinations remain the currency of mobility. Education reforms attempted to move towards competency-based learning remain stalled. Political turbulence repeatedly stalls any type of advancement or progress. And so in this environment steps in the new disruptors, the AI-enabled edtech platforms, which is further complicated by the market logic of venture capitalism. So edtech promises to democratize access and leapfrog infrastructural deficits. But capitalism, entrenched in this system and mechanism of AI and edtech, often repackage and automate the very logics of a colonial classroom. Digitized exam coaching reframe learning as data dashboards, and most crucially are shaped by the imperatives of venture capital rather than the philosophy or pedagogies essential for critical education. So to examine this tension, I ask these questions. How do governance and funding models and boardroom politics, which is basically the makeup of the edtech AI companies, how do they shape what edtech platforms actually do? Do AI-enabled platforms reduce or exacerbate stratification across geography, language, class? And how these companies have co-opted the justice discourse into their branding strategy post-July 2024 student revolution, which ousted the previous long-standing government in Bangladesh. And how these AI technologies are experienced by those at the front lines, the students, teachers, school principals, policymakers, and designers. So to answer these questions, I have conducted 24 in-depth interviews across Bangladesh and a couple of interviews from India to get a comparative perspective, complemented by surveys and public discourse analysis surrounding student and teacher dialogue, and an ethnographic session of boot camps where students were asked to participate in education technology exercises using different type of interfaces in their learning. And these interviews spanned from startup founders, investors, product designers, engineers, policymakers, English medium and Banglamedium school principals, nonprofit leaders, and teachers. So there are three conceptual lenses that guided this work. First one is platform capitalism, the idea that platforms extract value through data and network effects, prioritizing growth and retention metrics over substantive outcomes. In education, this means optimizing for parental perception of progress rather than real pedagogy. Then we have data colonialism, which is everyday activities become raw material for extraction. In classrooms, personalization tools normalize surveillance as care. Dashboards translate learning into data traces legible to investors, but not necessarily meaningful to teachers. And third, I'm looking at global frameworks of AI risk and governance. UNESCO, EU's AI Act, UNICEF, all of them classify educational AI as high risk. They emphasize transparency, human oversight, and child rights. Yet, in countries like Bangladesh, graphics processing unit shortages, regulatory silos, and dependency on foreign vendors complicate these safeguards. So what did the research reveal so far? First, platforms function mainly as digital coaching centers. They are marketed as transformative but focus on mock tests and performance dashboards. Personalization is very thin as well, often rerouting queries through filters to ensure safety rather than adaptive pedagogy. And over here, it's also really interesting if we think about the dynamics of what it means to be safe. It's not the safety of the child, but safety of the company itself. The way data is filtered, the way the questions are filtered, speaks to the company's interest versus what students' interests are. One of the product managers that I had interviewed basically said that we are all trying to save ourselves in this hyped market. Curriculum developers are called product managers, and that is a very interesting shift in the mindset of how curriculum has become a product and education has become a commercial venture or product that needs to be delivered. Second, the startup model itself is a misfit for education. The interviews that I had done repeatedly highlighted this. Investors demanded very quick pivots, often at odds with educational timelines. A former engineer basically mentioned that parental perception was the real product goal. If a parent felt the child was learning, that was enough. Sometimes more effort went into designing glossy report cards using different AI features than fixing errors in the content. AI personalization, when implemented, was shaped less by learning science than by what could be scaled cheaply and demonstrated quickly to investors. And third is the myth of access. I had spoken with one of the largest NGOs in Bangladesh, and they have school programs running in all 64 districts of the country and 495 sub-district levels. And basically, looking at their student body, we saw that 50% of this student body did not even have access to email. Public university students, who are considered to be the creme de la creme of talented pool of students in the country, could not open Zoom accounts comfortably. Some households even lack a quiet room to study. Internet costs are prohibitive. Teachers, particularly in rural areas, seek transfers or are absent from the classroom. So no amount of AI can fill this empty classroom. So the success stories that are promoted as a branding strategy for the educational technology company is merely a branding strategy. And these are mostly promotional outliers. Students with extraordinary level of motivation or resources are the only ones who are able to have access to these AI-enabled edtech platform. Educators remain ambivalent. In my conversations with principals of English medium schools, and when I say English medium, these are all British curriculum schools, they compared AI to social media, calling for age restrictions to safeguard cognitive development. They fear that easy automation reduces students' ability to learn, which is the goal of schooling. There are some informal networks of principals in Bangladesh as well, and they collaborate through WhatsApp groups. And there we see a lot of tension within the management when it comes to allowing AI into classroom. There are teachers who teach ICT or computer science related subjects who are more open to the idea of having digital devices in the classroom, but otherwise teachers are not engaged, and this discourse on AI is not a part of their routine school management discussion. And even where AI is responsibly deployed, it's bounded. Platforms integrate safeguards like human moderation and context-specific chatbots for English practice, cyber safety modules, so it's in a very infancy stage. We do have our localized AI models, which can produce texts in Bangladesh, which is a mix of English and Bangla. So our AI can recognize that, but that's also in a very nascent stage. So education is being recast as a startup vertical, but education does not conform to startup timelines. Venture logics are built for quarterly returns, while education unfolds across lifetimes. And as I had mentioned, that Bangladeshi edtech companies, they remain highly reliant on the servers provided by the other big tech companies, and these are mainly private initiative. Even within the government, there is a lot of distrust when it comes to engaging with private edtech companies, also foreign servers. So there's a sort of like a division over here. And while I was talking with different stakeholders, I saw very different visions of the future being presented. While engineers and product designers are very hopeful about the future of AI in Bangladesh, government and nonprofit leaders are as skeptical about what the future holds and what the learning trajectory for students would look like. The other thing that was really visible or something that was very prevalent in the interviews was the critique of the venture capital model for education and AI integration, where there is a push to enter a market as fast as possible and exit and overvalue product features. And this has also led many companies to build very easy, basic AI features into their models because they are cheaper to produce and they're easily marketable. We have also seen a lot of peer-driven buying behavior, where if colleagues or students performed better after using the interface, then other people would end up buying it. One thing that also stood out is the access rhetoric, which doesn't necessarily mean equity. Access was promoted as the possibility to expand market shares, get more students under the umbrella. So that's where the justice discourse also came in very significantly, where education technology companies called the revolution an unfinished revolution, and that revolution can only be finished or mitigated by including as many students as possible into their programs. I believe I covered this. Syndicates are also powerful groups. These are all coaching centers, guidebook producers, now have different edtech companies integrated into their groups, and they fund different initiatives and work with different fringes within the government to push for reforms, or basically push not to change so that they can keep expanding their market share. The other interesting finding so far was through my conversations with the telecommunications ministry, and how they've been struggling to work with the education ministry. And the education ministry is basically made up of bureaucrats, and it still remains very fragmented. One of the higher level education ministry officials resisted change in policy because he was basically waiting for his son to take the exams. And then the idea was that after his son finishes taking the exam, he will basically implement the change in policy. So this is just an example of the deep personal interest that is integrated into decision making when it comes to very top levels. So we have interest groups, we have like syndicates, we have the private sector, but also there is this lethargy or inertia from the government itself. So what is next? What are the recommendations? There is definitely a need for a translator. The visions presented by these different stakeholders, both in the private sector and public sector, do not overlap. They speak very different languages. When a product manager or an engineer at an edtech company is given the responsibility of creating a curriculum, they are not aware of the dynamics and needs of students. Similarly, a policymaker in the telecommunications ministry that's leading different AI policy efforts and framework are not aware of what the market is, where the market is going. So there needs to be a translator so that people understand each other's languages. The other key finding was that teacher voice is undermined. We don't have pedagogy experts, but the ones that are there are not present at the decision-making table. So the need for teacher voice is crucial. We do have local AI models, but the data on which our AI is being trained is very poor. There's a lot of data. It's a country with huge population, but when it comes to training, it's a struggle. Even after launching AI, what different founders or academic directors at companies are noticing is that student engagement with AI is very shallow, and it's limited to asking for different definitions or trying to do their homework very quickly. So that's also reflective of the entire education sector experience, where students are just trying to survive and get by rather than integrating themselves into the learning ecosystem or enjoying the education journey. We do talk about safeguards, but then again, talking with one of the government officers, I found out that they do not even track which of these education technology companies applied for licensing. So regulations do exist, but they are not tracked, they are not implemented, or they are not taken seriously either by the public sector or by the private sector, and they know that they can get away with not officially signing any paperwork. So that's another caveat. So to conclude, if these AI-driven platforms are left to define the future of education in Bangladesh, classrooms risk becoming data farms, optimized for engagement, legitimacy, and profit, but hollow in substance. If states, teachers, and communities somehow reclaim leadership, AI can possibly be steered toward equity, inquiry, and imagination.